What's up, guys? Ryan here. I wanted to do an off-road review of this motorcycle. I don't feel like it has gotten great reviews online, and I mean that in the sense that no one has given it an honest off-road review. And what I mean by that is people who have ridden this bike to the limits, or they're pushing their limits riding the motorcycle, of which I have done multiple times. I am not a professional rider at all. I typically sometimes sit idle, at months at a time, especially during the winter seasons here in Tennessee where it's cold. But I know some of you are probably more hardcore riders than I am. But I do ride exclusively off-road. I don't ride pavement anymore. But I did want to do an off-road review of this motorcycle because I don't believe it's been done justice. I'll say that. So out of the package, this bike comes with a stock skid plate that is insufficient. Pretty much every motorcycle that you buy from the floor is going to come with a crap skid plate. Plastic, fake plastic. It's going to need a replacement. So the same goes for the bark busters, the handlebar guards, and typically your exhaust, things like that. But in terms of protection, skid plate and bark busters are a need in most motorcycles. This bike does come with cast wheels stock, of which I did not have very many problems with. Some people, I guess, do smack potholes riding the street, and you're going to bend most any rim or break a rim smacking a pothole doing 80 miles an hour on the highway. But I did not have any problems. I think I did finally curb the lip of one a little bit out in Montana, I believe it was, but it wasn't enough to obviously flatten the tire, and it was barely enough to notice, just enough to notice the irregularity in the shape of the wheel. But yeah, it wasn't bad, and I had hitting some pretty hard dips and holes off-road at fairly decent speed, 35, 40 miles an hour, and had no issues. So I did want to do this review because I hadn't seen anybody give it what it really deserves, honestly. It's fuel injected motorcycle. I came off of a KLR 650 and a DR 650. DR 650 is what I rode before what I rode last anyway, before switching to this, and there's no way in hell I would go back to either of the KLR or the DR. The power delivery is so much quicker. This bike is a geared down 390 Duke motor, and I say geared down, it's just geared a little differently. Obviously you can play with it yourself. As far as your sprockets change, which I went with a 14 tooth up front for that lower down growl when I needed off-road. Highly suggest that. This bike with a 15T is weak out of the package during break-in, just because it limits you to 6,500 RPMs. But you throw that 14T on there and it'll scream a little more. But after the break-in period, this bike becomes an entirely different animal. I'm getting more horsepower out of this motorcycle now than I did in my DR 650, and that's dynoed to a fact. We're looking at 45 horsepower with a very simple exhaust change. So this little end cap right here changed 2 horsepower, and that's done by Best Dual Sport Bikes by Dave. The guy does his research, dynos the motorcycles before and after parts, and shows you the results. This bike weighs around 360 pounds. I think mine weighs actually a little less because I got rid of the pre-muffler that comes stock. It's a big hunk of metal that sits in this hole right here. But I took that out, just giving you guys an idea a little bit about what I've done to it. The skid plate was an issue for me. Clearance and the cast rims, neither of which gave me huge problems. The skid plate, 100% I suggest getting either the Black Dog, which is not cheap, or the T-Rex. I believe those are, when I bought mine, Black Dog was the only skid plate that offered the protection that transferred the damage or the shock load to the frame. The rest of the skid plates mount to the stock brace that mounts under here. It mounts to the engine. There's an engine, obviously your engine, the brace, and then a plastic guard skid plate. And SW Motec and many other these companies that are making these skid plates are using that stock brace. I'm not saying for the average rider that you know would do catastrophic damage if you smack something and still had that plate down there. All I know is that that engine is the way out of the woods, and I'm going to protect mine at all costs. I know the pace that we typically run is fairly fast, and the guys that I ride with are typically better than I am, so I'm playing catch up sometimes, running hard, and you know, you start losing focus and stuff like that. So smack a hole or a rock, something like that. I know I want mine to be tough as nails, and I went with the Black Dog, and it has 100% done its job. A lot of it's dirty now, but there are scratches all up and down it, and that's not from you know, just beating it to death because of clearance issues. We came across some cattle grates in Montana, or Idaho, I think, actually, cattle grates in Idaho that were seriously tall. So I popped the front wheel up and tried to launch over the first one, and about flew over the handlebars. So the next few that I crossed, I just slid across them on my skid plate. That's how tall these things were. But yeah, it did its job, glid right across. I highly recommend that. Again, just touching on the fact that anything you buy is going to require modification, skid plate, bark busters. I did go ahead and replace the cast wheels on this motorcycle. Like I said, I didn't have much problem out of them. I thought they were great. They were tough, and you know, this bike benefits from those cast wheels in the regard that it doesn't weigh very much. You're not riding a huge GS or a huge KTM super adventure bike, you know what I'm saying? This is not an 1190. But so the weight advantage is that you're not putting all that weight and shock load down on that wheel when you hit something. But like I said, I went ahead and replaced them. I like the tubes, being able to spoon on tires and make repairs on the go. I wanted that. I didn't want to be out stuck somewhere if I did end up bending something and not be out of luck. So I did replace those with the Power Part wheels. They're about $1,000, and I'm pleased with the way they look. I think there is some weight savings in that as well, so that's nice. Let's see. So this bike is more than capable off-road, and I'm planning to ride the Kentucky Adventure Trail this spring with this motorcycle. I modified the high fender kit with a bracket that I designed, so it comes with a low fender, and just modified the lower fender fork guards there out of the same stock fender. But it's got all the Farkle of the 790, just with a 390, slapped on the tank. Obviously it's not as powerful, but it's half the price as well. It's fully adjustable rear shock, fully adjustable 10 points of adjustment, and I know they're fully adjustable front forks as well. I've got caps on mine, as you can see here, but underneath these caps, you pop these caps off, and it's got your selectors in there, stiffen and soften. But I bought some fork extenders from the UK from Grant Owen. Highly recommend those. He does have a store online. Don't have a link to those, but if you join the 390 forums on Facebook, you can find him. I think he goes by Gee Owen or G Owen, Gee Owen. If you search his name in the 390 International Forum online, you'll find those. So that gave an extra inch of clearance. Like I said, I did the Continental Divide without that. but I think it definitely adds the enduro feel. The bike sits up higher in the front, and it feels just like when I sat on my DR650, except I have a quality suspension system now. So much more quality than the DR650 from the floor. The only thing the DR650 has on this motorcycle is clearance, and like I said, I have not experienced issues with that at all. So these are WP suspension. A lot of people may not consider that premium, but when you're looking at DR650 springs and having to go Cogent or send them off for thousands of dollars to get them repaired, I think you can upgrade the front for around $200. I can't remember the name of the company that makes the fork springs for these. Adventure Matt is also a good source of information. He's done a lot to his 390. Highly recommend watching his channels and subscribing to his stuff. A lot of good information there. But did want to drop a review, because aside from Adventure Matt's videos, there's no videos out there that I've seen that give honest reviews, especially of some hardcore off-road stuff. Now, I'm not talking single track doing backflips on tabletops and stuff like that. I'm just talking, your rugged trails, not your hard pack stuff, your rugged trails, and gnarly trails, so it's very capable. Like I said, I would not go back to a DR650 after riding this. And it's 60, when I bought mine it was $61.99 MSRP. I think it's like $65.99 MSRP. It's half the price of most adventure bikes, and I'm pushing 45 horsepower. That's more than a DR650. So I mean, it's just the price point, the power, the weight, the lightweight, it all made sense to me, and I went for it, and I could not be more pleased. I mean, it's the next step up from this is probably a 701, Husky, something like that. I'm typically not going to buy a dirt bike that requires oil changes every time I get back from a trip. So I'm staying in somewhat of an adventure class, and I cannot see how KTM made a dime on this bike. It's been fantastic. If you haven't seen one or sat on one, just an idea of what the little electronics look like. I've got 3595, which is practically exclusively off-road. I did run a couple 100 miles for break-in, or a few hundred actually, to get to the break-in period. But it's got off-road, on-road mode, quick selectors, motorcycle traction control on and off. These are all set presets. They offer updates to the software, trips and data. Let's see. Average speed 41 miles an hour, off-road mostly, like I said. That was just on one trip. It gives you, there's a lot of different stuff in here, man. I mean, a lot. Let's see. It's got your fuel range, 105, which is, it's actually going to be more than that. This thing gets around 64 miles per gallon. I can't remember how to get to, my info, what it's getting per gallon. There we go. Now it's saying 62, but that's just on the second trip. So, I mean, it monitors the way you ride. It changes while you're riding. It fluctuates just depending on how much you're getting on the throttle. But very efficient motorcycle. I mean, we're looking at 260 to 280 miles a tank, depending. You could probably stretch it, but obviously, off-road you're going to get less miles. But yeah, so just wanted to give that update. Thought I would share with you guys. Very capable off-road motorcycle. Do not look past this 390. If you're looking at any of these other bikes I've mentioned, go sit on one, give it a shot. You're talking about going from carbureted to fast forwarding to electronic fuel injection. The throttle response, the delivery of the power, everything is just so smooth, and it's gotten me out of situations. It's saved me. Being able to have that front ABS and be able to lock up the rear with the motorcycle traction control off. That's what happens. You turn that motorcycle traction control off, You can spin the rear wheel, and you can also lock it up with the brake. Being able to slide that and also have the ABS up front pounding the brake pads to slow me down has saved me from going down, I would say, at least 3 or 4 times, where I would have probably been pretty, it would have probably hurt. I know that. But just the little things, the technology, it's lean angle traction control as well. If you're on the street, if you're a street guy and you want to run it like that, like I said, I bought mine for off-road only, but highly recommend it. Just thought I would drop this video because I haven't seen anything else out there that does this bike justice, with the exception of Adventure Matt. So yeah, I just did this just for informational purposes. You don't have to like. If you have any questions or just want to chat, hit me up in the comment section. All right, guys, take care.